2020 Best Teacher Awardee. Now you happen to be our third speaker. So welcome to our third edition of Awakening Talk. By this talk, we would ask our guest speakers to talk about their life and their experiences of various fields, what they are working for. Ladies and gentlemen, let me proudly introduce today the guest of the day today is Shaheen Mistry. Most of the people in India, those who are into education, is very familiar with Shaheen. Shaheen grew up in 5 countries around the world and got exposed to more than different countries' education system. That changed her way she looked at the education and life. And she returned to India when she was just 18, and she started Akanksha Foundation. I think most of us are familiar with Akanksha Foundation. For 17 years, she worked with teachers and students, building Akanksha to provide children from low-income communities the kind of education that would maximize their greatest potential. Today, Akanksha serves 9,300 children through their school project and after-school centers in Mumbai and Pune. In 2008, Shaheen founded Teach for India with an audacious vision of providing an excellent education to all children across India through building a pipeline of leaders committed to ending education inequality in India. Today, Teach for India directly impacts approximately 32,000 children across 7 regions in India. Shaheen also has created projects like the Maya Musical, the Kids Education Revolution, which explores student leadership, creating platform for students' voice and partnership. And TFLX, which is a year-long incubation program for passionate entrepreneurs who are willing to adapt Teach for India's model for their context and region in rural areas. And Shaheen Mistry currently serves on boards of Akanksha Foundation. She also has been an Ashoka Fellow, a global leader for tomorrow at the World Economic Forum, and an Asia Society 21 leader. She also wrote 2 books. One is Redrawing India and the Miss Mugly Children's Books. She has a bachelor's degree from St. Xavier's College, Mumbai, and a master's degree from University of Manchester. Now, very often when India Today has had a talk with Shaheen, and when I was reading her interview in the India Today, I was really taken up by the question in her mind. The question is, how do we address the tough questions of why people are not aspiring to be teachers? A teacher's son never wanted to be a teacher, but a doctor's son always wanted to be a doctor, and they turned out to be doctors. An engineer's son always an engineer. But very rarely we find a teacher's son or children wanted to be teachers. Why it is like this? How do we bring the best people into teaching profession? And how can we change the way we value education? So these are the questions in Shaheen's mind, and through Teach for India Foundation, Shaheen wanted to find answers to this. I hope she is still searching for the answer, or I don't know whether she has answer for this. And we are waiting for Shaheen. It's over to you. We would like to hear from you. It's been a very, very long journey, right from a teenager, a very, very free teenager who has seen around the world, and to be in the service of education for so many years. It has been a very tough. It was not rosy at all. How was your journey from just a 17-year-old teenager to be a mature educator whom India is looking at? So over to you, Shaheen. Yeah.
Thank you so much, George, for that beautiful introduction, and I'm sending you lots of love for that, but also to all the people on the call. I always say that the people I have the most respect for in the world fall into 2 categories. They are students and they are teachers. And so it's just beautiful to have this opportunity to address all of you and share a little bit of my journey, and more than my journey, how my beliefs have evolved over time. And my hope is certainly, George, I don't have the answers to the question you asked, but I'll share a little bit of how I've started to think over time, with the hope that this talk leaves you with your own ideas, your own questions, and perhaps a little more motivation than all the motivation you already have to serve the country through education. So again, I feel very honored to be here. I also feel a little bit nervous. I'm looking almost 600 people on the Zoom call. It's not easy to address 600 people on Zoom. So I request two things of all of you on this call as I'm speaking. One is that you smile a lot, because it'll help me if you smile. And I know Zoom is a difficult platform, so do what you need to stay engaged. If you need to doodle, if you need to stretch, if you need to get yourself a glass of water, please feel absolutely comfortable through this time. And the second is, please do use the chat box. It's already been lovely to see your introductions in the chat. But any thoughts as I'm speaking, any questions that are arising in your mind, any ideas that you have for me, I would very much value that. And don't worry about, is what I'm saying right, wrong? If I'm a student being nervous, just feel completely free, so that it feels like we are all actually in one room. So with that, just give me a second. I'm going to share my screen and share a little bit of my thoughts. And I thought a lot, George, after the kind introduction, about what I wanted to share. And I thought that I would anchor a lot of what I said in this vision that I believe very deeply in. How do we live one day in an India that is free of poverty for all people and filled with love for all people? So that's what I'm going to be talking a little bit about. And the question I'm going to ask you at the beginning and at the end for you to think about is really a question that I ask myself a lot. When we think about this India, free of poverty and filled with love, what is the greatest role we can play, each of us, as individuals? So I ask that you hold that question. And let me start by sharing a little bit of when I asked myself that question, how I answered that question for myself as well. So my journey goes back many years. I turned 50 this year, so I'm getting older now, and I've been working for the last 30 years with children. But one image that stays in my mind and my heart a lot is the image that you see here. This is the sight you see when you're flying in an airplane, about to land in Mumbai, which is the city that I grew up in. And as you'll see from this slide, every time I see this picture, something in my heart stops a little bit, because you can see the unequal opportunity in this one picture. You see the high-rise buildings, and you know that people living there have so much more opportunity than the slum community literally adjoining it. And so for many, many years, I used to ask myself, since I started my journey at 18, actually, why? Why does this inequity exist? Why do some people have opportunities and other people not have opportunities? Around 18. But when I was 18, I was living in America. I was studying in a really good university called Tufts University, but something felt a little bit wrong in my life. And I questioned, what am I doing living in America? Can I be of more service in India? So when I was 18, I took quite a crazy decision. My parents were not very happy, and I dropped out of Tufts University And I came back to Mumbai. I'd never lived in Bombay before that. And I was 18 years old, and I walked into a community, and luckily I had a camera. In those days, we didn't have mobile phones, we had cameras, and I took a photograph, and this is the very first picture and the very first child that I met. Her name was Pinky, and I lost touch with her soon after that, but I always keep this photograph because if you look carefully, you'll notice her eyes, and they are symbolic of the eyes of every young Indian child, full of potential, sparkling. And I remember looking at her thinking, how incredible the potential of this young Pinky is. And then almost in the same breath thinking, but what if she doesn't get the opportunity she needs to really unleash her potential? What if she doesn't get those opportunities? And so I would walk around the community, and I was just 18. I didn't speak a word of any Indian language. I'd never lived in India before, but I would walk around the community asking myself, oh my gosh, what if that child is the next Sachin Tendulkar? And what if that little girl is the next social entrepreneur? And maybe what if that little boy becomes the next prime minister of the country? And the more I asked myself this question, the more I realized that it is only opportunity that can make that happen, that has a chance to erase all of the hardship that many of our children face. And so when I was 18, I started a very small college project called Akanksha. This was 30 years ago now. And Akanksha means hope and aspiration. And we were a small group of college students. We got together and we started teaching children. And for 17 years, I built that organization from an after-school program to a program that works in partnership with the government to run schools. But we said, you know, if children come from a more disadvantaged background, we need to give them an even better education. So we would ask ourselves, what is that excellent education? What kind of education will really unleash children's potential? So for 17 years, I sort of grew up at Akanksha. And then 17 years later, I asked myself, you know, and George in his introduction mentioned Akanksha today has about 9,000 children. And I looked at the scale of India and I said, what is 9,000 children? It is a drop in the ocean. And so I started a second organization 12 years ago called Teach for India. And the idea behind Teach for India was to build a movement of like-minded people who really believed in children, and to say, can we work together? Organizations like your own, like Teach for India, so many of us, can we come together to make sure that every child in the country gets an excellent, equitable education? And so this was one of our first posters 12 years ago. We had a little bit of a crazy idea. We said, can we get young people after they finished college or from, they're working in a company today, can we get them to give up what they're doing and come and teach full-time for 2 years in some of our poorest schools across the country? And, you know, when we first had this idea 12 years ago, people said, this is a crazy idea. Why will somebody want to graduate from IIT and come and teach in a government school? Parents threw their hands up and said, you know, I didn't educate my child to go and become a teacher. I educated my child to be a banker or a lawyer or but not a teacher. But we said, no, we need the country's best, most committed people to solve this problem, because educational inequity is our nation's biggest and most important problem to solve. The other reason we felt we needed the best people to be teachers, and many of you on this call will already know this because you are teachers, is that we believed that every single child in India is so precious. And when you look at this poster, at that time, 8 million children in India cannot even write their names, right? When we look at the dropout, we look at the statistics, we know that today by grade 3, 75% of our children are already falling behind. And yet we know how precious they are. So I'm going to show you two examples. One is a child who has only been in a Teach for India classroom for 3 months. Okay, so this is a young child, never been in a TFI classroom before. But I want you to see this video because one, I got a lot of joy watching this video, this little Naveen. He has been given a homework assignment to tell his teacher how he gets ready for school. And 3 months ago, he didn't speak a word of English. He was not able to do anything. All of this is happening online because of the pandemic. But I want you to just ground yourself in how precious each child is. So let me show you a small part of this video. So I wanted to show you that because it's such a simple example. But if you looked carefully, could you see how sincere that young child was? How seriously he took that simple task? How hard he was trying to please his teacher? And to me, this is the starting point, right? The children come into our classrooms and they know very little about most things. And yet, it is in our hands, not just as teachers, but as other students as well, to really give our children the opportunities to succeed. And so what happens over time, I'm going to show you a second example. And this is the example of a student who grew up in Pune in a low-income community. You see her here with her mother. And her father sadly is in prison. So the mother has taken care of her and raised her completely on her own. She's a single child. She has struggled a lot in her life. She came into Teach for India, George mentioned in the introduction, through a musical I did called Maya, where she played the role of a 9-headed snake. And through Maya, she really learned to articulate her purpose, her values. She really blossomed through Maya. And post Maya, she got the opportunity to earn a full scholarship to study at the United World College in Italy, and then got a full scholarship to study in one of the top liberal arts universities in America called Franklin Marshall. And the most inspiring thing is today, she has joined Teach for India as a fellow. So you see her here in a Zoom class with her own students. That is the power of what we can do with an individual child. Often people say, think of scale. But I feel when we do deep work with our children, it has such a powerful multiplier. So really, that's a little bit of what Teach for India is trying to do. But I wanted to share one more story about the same child, Priyanka. And this is a story of when she was 14 years old during our Maya process. We took our children on a journey and we said, we want you to practice 3 values: courage, compassion, and wisdom. And as part of that, on one of our outings, we took them to an old age home. And Priyanka met an old lady there who couldn't speak a word of English or Hindi or Marathi. So now Priyanka and this woman communicated through a lot of smiles, a lot of hand gestures, and they got along very, very well. And then they left. And a few months later, we came back to the old age home. And this time, Priyanka brought a bar of chocolate for her friend who lived in the old age home. Priyanka also that day happened to have with her a teddy bear. Now, this toy teddy bear of hers was very precious to her. Her whole life, this toy had been her sense of security, and she had had it with her whole life. So she goes to meet this old lady. She has the bar of chocolate in one hand. She has the teddy bear in her other hand. And the old lady, I think by mistake, thought that Priyanka was going to give her the toy. So she put her hand out, she took the bar of chocolate, and she put her hand out for the teddy bear. And Priyanka hesitated for a moment and then handed her the teddy bear as well. So after this, I met Priyanka and I said, Priyanka, how wonderful. That must have been such a difficult thing for you to do. This was your favorite toy. It represented so much to you. I said, this was such a beautiful example of courage, compassion, and wisdom. And she was 14 years old and she said to me, no, Didi. She said, this was not a beautiful example because if I really understood compassion, I would not have waited and hesitated for a moment. I would have just given her the teddy bear straight away. And you know, when I think about that story, I think this is education. To have that level of awareness, to be able to look within ourselves and ask ourselves, are we living our values? This is the kind of education that we can do with our students. So when you see little Naveen in the first example, having a bath and helping, to get ready, and then you see Priyanka's example, the question is, who are the leaders behind those examples? What has really enabled that? And that's where the Teach for India Fellowship comes in. And here you see another TFI fellow where today there are about 1,000 fellows. These are people who come from all different kinds of backgrounds across the country who say, we want a country where every child has an excellent education. And they come and they sign up to teach for 2 years full-time in government schools and in some of the lowest income schools in our communities. And after the 2-year fellowship, which we say is really their own journey of leadership, because we all know this as teachers, but when you teach, you learn to lead. After that, they join the Teach for India alumni movement. And this is really the big idea of Teach for India, is that you teach for 2 years, you really focus on the children in your classroom, but then you ask, how can I do more? How can I serve the country? So what does this look like? I'll give you 3 examples. This is Himakshi. Himakshi taught, and you see the picture under her, she taught a group of children during the Teach for India Fellowship. And then after the fellowship, she said, you know what? The country is only going to change if our politicians change. And so she, along with another fellow, said, if we really want to fix education, health, some of our biggest issues, we need a new generation of politicians who are honest, who have high morals, who hold on to their high morals even when they have challenges. And so she started something called the Indian School of Democracy, which today is a fellowship similar to TFI, but for aspiring politicians. So here you can see what TFI is trying to do. We're trying to say, first, work with a group of children. Then after you graduate in 2 years, go out and do something even bigger. Here's a second example, and I love this example. This is Anurag, who taught in one of our schools in Delhi. And when he was teaching, he was very deeply bothered by the way children were treated, the number of children that were hit, that were humiliated in schools. He really wanted to change that. So after he graduated, he went to the Delhi government and he said, I want to work for child rights. And Delhi government told him, sorry, we don't have a job. So he said, okay. He said, then I will work without any money. And for 3 years, he worked without any money until finally they saw he was so dedicated that they gave him a job. And today he's the youngest chairperson of the DCPCR, which is responsible for child protection for all children across Delhi. So again, here you can see what Teach for India has done. First 2 years, work with your children, really bring about a deep change. Then after the 2 years, try to ask, how can you impact children in a bigger way? And finally, meet Tarun. And I love this example because the story goes that Tarun, on his first day of the Teach for India fellowship, walked past his school 4 times because he didn't even believe that it was a school. So you can see on the left, that was the whole school. It was falling apart. And the first thing he did was, when he got his classroom, he got people and he painted the whole classroom. He called it the Happy Harvard class. And he said, my children are going to have the opportunities to do whatever they want in their lives. After the fellowship, he started an organization called Indus Action that has, over the last 10 years, integrated 3.3 lakh children into private schools under Section 12 of the Right to Education Act. So again, third example where you see 2 years, put your head down, really understand what it means to teach, grow as a leader, and then as an alumni have an even bigger impact. So what I'm going to do now, oops, sorry, one second. I'm going to show you a short video that will help you see the 4,000 alumni today. What are they really trying to do, and how can this movement grow? And then I'm going to come back to this idea of what is the role that you can play. Okay. So as we look at that and we understand a little bit of the Teach for India movement, what does it mean for each one of us is really the question. And I really feel like the Taruns, the Himakshis, the Priyankas, these are not the one-off children, the bright ones, the ones who can lead. There is actually the potential to lead in every single one of us. And as students on the call, do we believe this about ourselves? And do we believe this about each other? And as teachers on the call, do we believe this? Not about the children in our class who answer the questions the first, but the children who struggle the most. And I think, we often think of leaders as much older people, but these 3 girls give me a lot of hope. On the left, we are all familiar with Greta and how she is leading the climate crisis. In the middle, of course, our dear Malala, and what a symbol of courage And on the right, Emma, who in America stood up when there was a shooting at her school and led the movement against gun violence in the country. So there is such potential in our students. How does this actually happen? I think this has been the big question. And George, you asked a version of this question as well in the introduction. So I'm going to share my best understanding of what kind of education leads to those kind of leaders. You know, when I've been studying over 30 years, children and teachers, and saying what really creates this kind of leadership in each one of us. Three big ideas. One, are our children and are our teachers feeling safe? And not just safe physically, but safe to be able to express an opinion that is different, safe to be somebody who is a little bit unusual. As educators and as students, are we doing that for ourselves, but also for others? This has been one of the most foundational things I've found that matter in education. The second, do we think of our students as our partners? Or are we used to standing at the front of the classroom and teaching and controlling a group of children? But what if we shifted that? What if we thought that our children also had a role to play in not just their education, but in the education of others? And finally, can education be about driving change, not just doing well on exams, right? Can children come to school thinking, I am learning the skills and mindsets, not just for a livelihood, but also to make the world a better place? So these are three big ideas that we have understood. And the way to get there, we call these characters the 8 C's. And we say for each one of us, can we ask ourselves, how much am I strong in communication? How much compassion do I have? How much courage do I have? And can I practice the actions of these 8 C's? So to bring that to life a little bit, I'm going to show you a video where you will see these 3 principles: safe space, partnership, change making, and the 8 C's in practice. And this is what we call the kids' education revolution, where we're trying to say, can our children really be our partners? Can we be listening to our children, learning from our children?
We are reimagining education because our Indian education system is not good enough and we want to change it.
It's like a movement of kids to just reimagining education.
It's about equal contribution between adults and us as kids. Adults are not getting educated, we are getting educated. It should be in our hands what we want to learn.
I'm so excited to be here, like meeting 101 student leaders. I was just like, wow, there are kids from almost 7 cities and there are a few kids from outside the country. They have different stories, they have different life journey, they have different backgrounds. All 101 leaders are sitting together and framing the National Summit. What is it for us?
Student voice matters and it is important for us to be equal partners in education system. This is the biggest platform for kids like me to get up, raise our voice and actually do something for the betterment of our future.
I ask, why do I not have the choice to learn what I want to? And why do I have these restrictions and no place for my own dreams?
What I feel is a problem for me right now, you don't get that much respect if you don't get 99%. Marks will decide what our gifts are going to be. Marks are going to decide what our future is going to be. And what about experience?
When we step out of 10th standard, we're lost. We're lost with no experience, no exposure about what's life going to be ahead.
Teachers don't realize how important it is for them to listen what the students want to say.
Now I know. skills need a lot of sacrifice. But haven't we suffered enough? So I will rise. We will rise. We will rise.
Finally, I'm at the National Summit today. I and my friends were taking a Slam Out Loud session, which was based on poetry. Actually, before that, I was nervous because they are adults and we are kids. This was my first experience to teach adults, and it was an awesome experience for me.
Honestly, I'm just blown away by the students because it was absolutely remarkable. The ownership, the leadership, the confidence. It's like you're maximizing their potential.
Kids can take ownership and kids can play the role of a leader for their own sake. That's where it starts.
Teamwork, relationships, empathy, emotions, and such things. You can apply it to your subjects as well. The conversation becomes richer. The development of the child becomes much more holistic. I mean, even for the growth of the professional development for the teacher, it is really beneficial if the child is giving something to them. You know, it really can't be one way.
We're talking about equal partnership yesterday, and I actually put equal partnership in all the groups.
It gives us a lot to think about where we can get students to become more involved, be more participative, get the management to be more open about accepting student opinion.
One thing that they will definitely, I will take away is having a student's picture in their mind. Not underestimating children, because now they have seen how much we can do if we are getting the right support. So I think just a picture or just a story that they have heard from a student, how have that story or that child shifted their thinking.
If the educators really listen to us and learn from us and do want to make change, that's going to be a huge need in the education sector.
There's always a beginning in a revolution, and I believe that kids' education revolution is what we need to change society.
Whatever dies, it never works. When it works, flies. Whatever fails, to soar. Let us plant, planting seed and nothing more.
So I hope you enjoyed that and you were able to see some of the concepts, but I just want to make this real and share one more example with you. This is Rehan. I met Rehan when he was 10 years old, and Rehan lives in a low-income community in Ahmedabad that is literally surrounded by 8 mountains of garbage, and his home is in the middle of this garbage dump. 10-year-old Rehan and his friend Basit over there on the bottom left decided they wanted to do something about it. So they climbed the mountain of garbage, they took samples, they sent them to the press. They started lobbying the government. They got the government to agree to start clearing the garbage. Then they realized that a lot of younger kids in their community were not going to school. So they set up 20 learning centers, each one with a teacher who was 10 to 12 years old for the younger kids in their community. Then they realized that there was no greenery in their community. So they started a plant nursery. These children set up their own organization when they were 12 years old called Pencil Bricks. And today they continue to work to uplift their community. That is the power of children and the power of some of these ideas. I'll end with the same question that I started with. As we think about an India free of poverty and filled with love, what's the role that we can play as students and as teachers? What is the role we can encourage our kids to play? You know, partnership sounds great, but what can it look like? And here are some small examples. It can look like peer-to-peer teaching in your classroom so that a teacher doesn't have to teach every single child themselves, but kids are leveraging their own strengths. It can look like students speaking up when other kids are mistreated at home or in school. It can look like students actually doing projects to improve things in their school, in their community. Students sitting on student councils or SMCs. Students speaking up in the news or at education conferences. Children perhaps being invited to do the speech that I have been invited to do today. And of course, encouraging students to join programs like Teach for India and other programs where they have a structured way to contribute to the country. And so with that, I will end with a lot of gratitude for all of your listening. And the same question, what is the greatest role that each one of us can play? George, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, Shaheen, that was wonderful, wonderful, experiences and wonderful pictures and the story of change. Now, I think the session is open for questions to Shaheen. If anybody would like to ask questions directly, you can ask. But the question should be related to the topic and the work she is doing. Shaheen, before we go to the questions, could you just elaborate something more about the Teach for India Fellowship? Recently we are asking our graduates just out of their colleges. We have 30 degree colleges exclusive for women. We are encouraging them to join the fellowship of Teach for India Fellowship. Could you speak something more, because most of the principals are and some of the students also here. Could you speak something more about the Teach for India Fellowship?
Sure, would love to. Thank you for that question. And we really need all of your help on this call to spread the word about the Teach for India Fellowship. I've also put the website in the chat window, so you'll get a lot more information on the fellowship there. But essentially, it is a process where you apply to the fellowship after you finish university. You can be in any stream, it doesn't matter, but you apply to the fellowship online on the website itself, and you fill in a written application. And then if you pass the first stage, we invite you to an assessment center where there is an interview. And we select people, and then they are placed in one of 8 cities across India. The fellowship today is in Mumbai, Pune, Delhi, Hyderabad, Chennai, Ahmedabad, and Kolkata is our newest site. And I think I missed one, maybe Bangalore. And so you get placed as a full-time teacher for 2 years. We do a lot of intensive training. So a lot of the ideas that I shared with you on the call, we train our fellows not just to teach content, but to inculcate values in their children, expose them to the world, push them to be student leaders. So we really do a lot of training through the 2 years for our Teach for India fellows as well. They are full-time teachers. In year 2, they take on a leadership project as well. And then at the end of the 2 years, we run a career fair because we really want to help place them in jobs where they can continue to impact education. So really, if you know anyone who has a passion for education or for broader social change, they are the kinds of people who I think would do very well in the fellowship. Yeah, thank you. Abhiman has just put the link in, so you can just click on the link and go directly to the website.
We are in the process of encouraging. So far, we are missing around 180 applications so far. So come maybe around 15th, we would like to select them final from our end and ask them to apply for Teach for India Fellowship. So this is the first time we are encouraging our own students, our own alumni from our own institutions. We have around 250,000 children studying from class 5 to degree colleges. So
I can't even imagine how you manage so many children. Just incredible, the work that you all are doing.
Yes, it's a big teamwork. It's a big teamwork. All are very passionate, and teachers, our principals, and all those who are in this Zoom conference. Most of our field officers are also there. We have officers from our head office, and field officers are there. They're the senior most school leaders and teachers. They're very passionate. They're all fully residential schools. So without
Yeah.
commitment, I think we were not able to achieve these things, It
Yeah.
is not just the work, actually it's a commitment from all the teachers.
Absolutely. And I think there's a beautiful question in the chat from Sri Lakshmi. I'll just answer that question around what is the methodology and curriculum needed to bring out the complete potential. And I just want to share, I've put under that, Sri Lakshmi, for you and others also, a link to our Kids Education Revolution website. If you go to that website and you go to the ACT section, you will find details of the methodology that we use. So when I talked about the 3 principles and the 8 C's, we've broken those down into action. So for example, what are the simple practices you can do every day to build curiosity or to build critical thinking? And you will find links to curriculum, what we call our student vision scale. So at Teach for India, we believe that an education is about self, which means, can I discover myself, my place in the world, my purpose, the job I want to do? But education is also about other. How do I learn to love and respect and give others opportunity? And education is also about India. What does it mean to be a change maker and make India better? So our whole curriculum and methodology aims at growing children in those 3 areas. And I think really that's the first big change to do is to say, can we change the way we think about the purpose of education? If we were asking ourselves at the beginning of the year, every year, not just how do our kids do well in academics, but how do our children grow as good human beings, we will then find different methodology as well.
Good. Yeah, if you have still more questions, please put in the chat box. Yeah.
And I'd love, maybe, George, if we could ask everybody to just go to the chat box and just type anything on your mind right now. It could be something that inspired you. It could be a question you have. It could be a doubt you have, anything at all. But I would really love to hear what's on your mind as well. How do we select our students? That's a great question. Thank you for that. So we actually don't have our own schools. We place our teachers in existing government schools and in low-income private schools. So we do not select children at all. Whichever kids are already there in the government schools, we take on those children, usually in class 1 or class 2. And then we stay with our children right until they graduate from school. So we have a real mixed lot of children, but again, we really believe that with the right opportunities, children are different, but every child can find their place in the world and every child is special. Yes, Ramesh, there are lots of details on the website. And I would request you to look at both the websites, look at the Kids Education Revolution and look at the TFI one. And Abhiman, can I request you maybe to put the FIRCI website in the chat as well? I think Abhiman may have frozen. I'll just put, there is a beautiful 3rd website, which I'm going to put, which we've created to train teachers. And it's a completely free portal where you can go to learn methodology, you can watch webinars. So all of our methodology is on that platform as well. It's called FIRCI. Yes. And George, maybe after this call, you could circulate these 3 websites as well. I'm happy to send across a short description. But if you also, because I know there are a lot of principals on the call, if you're looking for courses to train your own teachers in, FIRCI is an excellent platform. It has a lot of trainings on it, but the FIRCI team is also happy to customize for your school. So you could reach out to us separately and we'd be very happy to work with you.
Shaheen, by the way, we have centralized training for our workforce of 7,000 to 8,000 teachers of different cadres. So if we want to get contact, is there any POC for FIRCI?
Yes, yes. If you write to me, George, after this, I'll connect you to Ashwath, who is our POC. Yeah.
Thank you. Good. You say it's free.
Yes, it's completely free. So our whole intention is to spread a lot of what we have learned, not just ourselves, but we also have learned from so many different partners, and all of that learning is on the platform.
Good, good.
In
In
the form of
fact, we are looking for some kind of training, wherein we can, strengthen our teachers, classroom management, and teaching strategies.
So that's exactly what the kind of trainings that we have, and we would love to share that. And it's all with short videos in an Indian context, so it's very relevant as well.
Thank you. So I got another source of, another source for training. Right. Thank you today.
Yeah. Sadguna, such a beautiful question. It's a very new program. So we don't have established politicians yet, but a lot of aspiring politicians in the program right now in the Indian School of Democracy. And again, happy to connect you to any of these individuals also in our alumni movement. So the age for the fellowship is post-university. So we don't have an age, but you have to have completed university to join. And good question about the exams. So it depends on where we work across 8 different cities. So we follow whatever that particular state follows. So we do, if it's a state board school, our kids do give the state board exams. If it's a central board, they give the central board exams. But we have our own curriculum that supplements that. So we don't just do that, we go above that. Thank you so much.
Any more questions?
I know it's also been such a difficult 2 years for students and teachers with schools being closed, and just want to express my gratitude for all the efforts all of you must have made to keep students learning, students for you to have the motivation to keep learning, even though it's been so difficult. And I know at Teach for India, we struggled a lot. Many of our kids didn't have access to hardware to continue learning. And our teachers have also, all teachers have needed to retrain themselves and upskill themselves for the online world. So lots of gratitude to all of you on the call. Yes, and Sadguna, most welcome. Please, for all of you, if you are in any one of our cities, you would like to visit a classroom, see the Teach for India program in action, you are most welcome. We would love to host you.
Yeah, and by the way, Shaheen, we had around 9 Teach for India fellows engaged with our schools 2019-20. So 1 year, it has been a wonderful intervention with them. We are also happy. Our teachers learned a lot of things from these youngsters. So
Great.
Unfortunately, then COVID set in, we could not have their services further.
Great. And also through the Kids Education Revolution, like the video I showed you, we do different events. Some of them are virtual. In fact, we have a big international event coming up that we would love for your students and teachers to join. So after this call, I will request Abhiman to send you details. Teach for India is one of 60 countries that run similar programs. So we're all part of a global network called Teach for All. And there is a global conference coming up this month in October, where we will be conducting a lot of sessions, and we would love to invite you.
Thank you. Yeah, there are a lot of opportunities.
Lots of opportunities. Yeah.
Thank you. So one is teachers training, and other maybe Kids Revolution participation for our students.
Yes, I think Oppo had a question. I didn't quite understand, Oppo, your question. Would you like to share a little more?
Somebody was mentioning today, we know about puppy and nice.
Maybe later, no problem.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. I love that point of why are people not encouraging teaching profession? I don't know what the answer to that question is, but I do know that the way we talk about teaching will make a huge difference. If we keep saying that it is the most important thing, it is the most influential thing to do, then the people around us will start to believe that. You know, when we started Teach for India, people thought we were crazy. They thought, why will people join a program like this? But we just said, no, we need the best people. We need the brightest people. Teaching is the most important thing. And I think if we, all of us on this call, have that conviction, the new generation will get excited, you know, and I would encourage all the principals and teachers on the call, start talking to your own children about the power, your own students, about the power of education. So the lovely question, which country? I'm originally born in India, but I lived in 5 different countries and then I came back to India. So that is why my accent is very mixed up from all over the world. And Bandari, great question on innovation. Again, you'll find a lot of those examples on the website as well. And it'll be broken down with examples of how to do it. So I would encourage you to go there. Any other questions?
Shaheen, I think I will have a question. You know, you have been involved in this mission of spreading education across different corners of India. And you have come to know in contact with many kids, thousands of kids and thousands of teachers. Now, through Teach for India, have you met the objective you are looking for, or any regrets are there, or still you are yet to find the meaning or the objective of what you have found in Teach for India?
Yeah, you know, I love that question, George. Our vision at Teach for India, this idea of an India free of poverty, filled with love and an excellent education for all children. We have only done a drop in the ocean so far. So I would never say that our work is done or even nearly done. But having said that, we have made a lot of progress. You know, when we started 12 years ago, we didn't think people would join the Teach for India Fellowship. And today, our alumni movement, they are touching about 33 million children across the country. So there is a lot of progress, but there is a long, long way to go. And even within our classrooms, you know, I always say until every child's potential is unleashed, our work is not done. And so what does it mean to keep putting our head down and doing the good work step by step, and also looking after ourselves in the process? Because we all know on this call, to be a student, to be a teacher, to be a principal, these are not easy jobs. They are difficult jobs, and we need to look after ourselves and take step by step.
Yeah, thank you. I think we are almost done there. I think you are also need to know. So thank you very much, Shaheen, for spending an hour with us. It has been great hearing from you. All of us heard about you, and most of our teachers and school leaders will know about you. But this is a very good opportunity for them to interact with you in person, so though virtually. So thank you very much for that. And we wish you many more success ahead. Your mission is one day all children will attain an excellent education, and the mission to build leaders towards eliminating education inequality. So hope you will succeed, and you'll invite many more the best people to the education field in India in your future journey. So thank you very much, Shaheen. And from all of us, thank you once again for joining us. And thanks to Abhiman for connecting Shaheen, and you are a very good coordinator. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Shaheen. I will be in touch with you because there are two areas wherein you have get associated with this. Do walk in any of our schools whenever you happen to be in.
I would love to do that. I would love to
show you around our schools. So thank you very much to all. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
And thanks to all for joining this today. So thank you very much to all the school leaders, teachers, and we can see some students also. So I think you learned something. You can also part of this Kids Revolution Madam was talking about. So you can contact your principals, and principals in turn will get in touch with me. So let us send some students for this big celebration across India. So thank you so much, all of you.